So let me just say a few words about the scope of the class, and then I want Amy to chime in and talk about it. We'll have a format where each session has lecture, some discussion, of course. That's really a big advantage of using Zoom is that we can get participation from the audience. Uh, we will do listening, of course, a lot of listening. We'll have a playlist for all who participate to listen to every week before and after the class. And we're going to do something a little non-traditional. We're going to do some basic percussion tutorials. Amy, you want to say a few words about that?
Sure. Hi. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? I think so. So I have had a chance to, during COVID, preview this, and it's been really fun to work with. The thing that excites me about doing this class and filling in some of the gaps on the social and historical perspective is taking a look at the history of the samba schools and the instruments and music even before we get to the place where there's an organized samba school in the 1930s. And each instrument has such an important role in the development of Brazilian music and culture and history. So there are so many mnemonics or little tricks to understand how the music is played that I think sometimes we get lost as an American culture. And one of the things I'm going to focus on is a word called caracachá. And really, that is, if I'm playing right now, I'm just going to play some 16th notes, 1E and 2E and 1E and we just put caracachá, caracachá, caracachá. We already have the feeling of what a samba can be. So we're going to learn some of these call them tricks or tools of the trade, if you will, to kind of understand how the rhythm functions in the music.
We're also going to take a sweeping historical perspective. We're going to begin with the late 19th century music, which is highly influenced by the dance and classical dance traditions of Europe. Brazilian music is obviously a fusion, and people tend to think about it in terms of its African origins, which is completely correct, but it's European origins and the way these two traditions have been brought together are really fascinating. We're going to look at 3 regions of Brazil because Brazil, like the US, is so vast, and we could look at music in many, many different parts. We're going to, of course, focus on Rio de Janeiro, where the carnival traditions have been very strong, and we'll look at the musical traditions from not just a musical perspective, but in it, of course, from a cultural, a social, and a political perspective, because music has been used very politically in Brazil. We'll also look at Salvador Bahia. Salvador Bahia is the major city of the Northeast. In fact, it was the first capital of Brazil before Rio de Janeiro became the capital. And it has a different tradition than the carnival samba schools of Rio, a very exciting one, much more street and participatory. And we will go a little farther northeast to Pernambuco and look at the traditions there. And we'll begin to refine our musical listening to how these were shaped by the different cultural influences. We'll also look at the music that may be a little less known because, as I said, music has quite a political edge to it in Brazil, particularly in the 1960s and the early 1970s when the Brazilian dictatorship was in great force. And there's a lot of very interesting poetic and critical, but in a subtle way, protest music that came out of those times. We'll end up, I think, with what, samba reggae, Amy?
Yeah, we'll touch on that from Bahia. Yeah, the way I like to think of it is we'll be touching on a rhythm tour and a music tour of Brazil, and it's about 150 years of music. And I think about it with some of the founding composers like Pixinguinha, Jacob de Bandolim, Chiquinha de Gonzaga. which really created the first national music, which later became samba, machixe and choro. And then going up through the Northeast, you hear musical rhythms like baião and coco and maracatu, and composers like Luis Gonzaga. And then up through Salvador, where you have these wonderful percussion groups like Olodum, made famous by being on records from pop stars like Michael Jackson, and hit some of the then contemporary, probably zigzag a little bit back through Rio and Sao Paulo, where you have, as Sherry was saying, some of the more social activist composers like Chico Buarque and Joycey and so many that we won't have time to cover them all. But
No.
that's that's a snippet, if you will.
I'm going to encourage you to save your frequent flyer miles, because after you take this course, you're probably going to want to take a trip to Brazil. Thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you.
Thank you.